Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. This is the Group of 5 Deep Dive. I'm your host, Mike Calabrese, joined by my Action Network co-host, Duck. We are more than halfway through the season. A reminder, though, we have 14 regular season weeks. That's not always the case with college football, but it's one of those years where we have the bonus regular season week. So we're spreading it out a little bit more. I feel like there's still a ton of meaningful football ahead of us, and hopefully lots of profitable football here for this particular podcast. Because we've been, at best, basically treading water. We've had some bad breaks. I could use my sounding off segment to talk about San Jose State, who had a 96% cover probability with 11 minutes to go. They end the game, miss field goal, pick six, punt, and they ran out of time. So no other choice but podcast prison. Sorry, Kenny Matalolo, but you are behind the bars for the foreseeable future. Such a frustrating game. Basically, it played out script-wise exactly how I thought it was. But as I mentioned, I'm saving my official sounding off segment for something that I'm hoping that long-term fans of this show can appreciate it. And it's my good guy, Trent Dilfer. We'll get to there and his farewell just in a moment. Duck, go ahead first with your sounding off. I know you have lots of things on your mind after last week. And even as we record on Tuesday night, some Tuesday night Conference USA action that has your chili running hot.
Yeah, and it wasn't fun last week to be on the wrong side of so many blowout losses. Louisiana Tech played very poorly. Fresno State didn't show up at Colorado State, but, we had San Jose State who was comfortably in hand and blew it. We had Toledo that was comfortably in hand and couldn't hold on. And in-game situational coaching is at an all-time bad as far as I've observed this 2025 college football season. We saw San Jose State completely abandon what got them 4 touchdowns in the first 20 minutes against Wyoming. We saw Toledo up 21-0 in a rivalry game in a revenge spot completely blow that lead, abandoning what was working. We have seen it tonight on Tuesday night where we've seen teams situationally not know when to get into half. Liberty's been outscored 24-0 or in the second half against New Mexico State. It's just been astonishingly bad situational coaching. You know what I think that these staffs need? I think every FBS staff needs to have somebody on the sidelines, possibly a former gambler, somebody who understands situational football as well as we do, to whisper in the coach's ear, the coach whisperer, hey, here's what we need to do. This is what you should do. I've watched 1,000 football games in my life and you haven't. This is what we need to do. I think the coach whisperer is an advisor of sorts that these coaches need, because it's just stunning how bad and how frequently the wrong decision is made.
From a time management perspective, I completely agree, but I think it's my experience in corporate America and working in politics as well. You can have the best advisors in the world, but if you're one of those pricks who's like, the buck stops with me, I make all the big decisions here for this organization, and then you don't take any of that advice, then it's kind of meaningless if you have one of those time management specialists or someone to talk situational football. Like, I love the head coaches, and we saw this kind of in the last 10 years, where coaches started to make a shift of when to go for 2, particularly down 14. You've seen this go from a niche, almost confusing moment for the announcers, down 14, go for 2 when you get that first touchdown, to now it's pretty much boilerplate, it's standard, everybody does it. But that was from head coaches saying, all right, the math guys explained it to me. They told me these are the moments. It's almost like when to hit on blackjack, when to stay, those kind of things. And they gave up that power a little bit. They need to expand that to when to use timeouts and how to effectively run a 4-minute offense, or, whether it's end of half or end of game situation. You're only as good as the advice that you're willing to take. So I agree with you. I think it would be interesting to have roles and niches carved out for assistant coaches, but you got to take your hands off the reins for a second, because these head coaches, the ego to say, I know better, or, forget the analytics, it's a gut decision kind of thing. It still rears its head here in the year of our Lord 2025.
Well, let's go back to that basic strategy too. Let's teach coaches how to play basic strategy. You need to play basic strategy if you want to give yourself the best chance to win.
No, it's absolutely true. All right, on to my farewell to our dear Trent Dilfer. Trent bemoaned the fact. Yeah, end of an era. He bemoaned the fact that in the NIL era, he had limited resources. Being at a G5 school, he couldn't quite get there. But let me say something right off the jump here. I'm going to borrow from the immortal words of Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross. You can't win with the resources you're given. You can't win shit. You are shit. Hit the bricks, pal, because you are going out. Oh, this feels fantastic. 9-21 overall, 5-14 in the American. 13-17 against the spread in his 30 games as the leading man there in the Magic City. You lost by 19 points per game on the road in your tenure. You brought in a high school defensive coordinator who struggled so badly for 2 seasons, he still doesn't have a Wikipedia page. You basically did the opposite of putting him on the map. The revered Bill Clark brought this program back from extinction. He won them a pair of Conference USA titles. He won the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year award. You know what Eddie Robinson, the Grambling legend, and Bill have in common? They loved this goddamn sport. They didn't care who they were coaching. They poured themselves into those jobs. They didn't talk down to the level of football. That's why I always hated Trent Dilfer from the jump. He had this kind of like, well, I was a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And have you seen my Elite 11 show on ESPNU? Screw you, Trent. All right? You talk down to the program. You talk down to the level. You said, oh, we're not Alabama, scoffing at that. People in Birmingham want to win, and they used to have winners. And by the way, Eddie Robinson, a legendary X's and O's tactician, he didn't need Elite 11 or a primetime NFL ESPN segment to come off as this smooth, quarterback whisperer. He just coached him up and got his program to new heights. All right, I'm going to calm myself down for a second, because the bottom line is, whether it was Bill Clark, whether it's Eddie Robinson, they won. Google him. You can go ahead and Google Trent Dilfer. He didn't win shit in 2.5 years. He's gone. But UAB, they can right the wrongs in 3 easy steps. And hey, look ahead. You've already completed step 1. Fire Trent Dilfer. Gold star. Great job. Step 2. Fire Mark Ingram, the athletic director in charge. The buck stops with him. Give him his walking papers. And step 3, and this one's the simplest one. Go hat in hand back to Bryant Vincent and say, we made a mistake. We hired the wrong guy. You were the interim head coach. You were right here. You had everything that we needed, and we let you walk. And now we basically took one of the worst programs. If you want to talk resources and expectations, ULM was absolutely at the bottom of the barrel. He's gone 8-10 in the past year and a half with limited resources. And to me, he's impressed me with his ability to win and also find and develop talent. He found Ahmad Hardy, who, by the way, just the best running back in the entire country at Mizzou now. He recruited him out of high school. He found that diamond in the rough. Get on the phone, get yourself a new AD, and get him to Birmingham stat. Restore the glory that is UAB football. This is one of the greatest stories in really the past 75 years of college football, to say a program was extinct, it was brought back to life, it was instantly turned to a winner. You suffered long enough through Trent Dilfer. Make it right with Coach Vincent. Do you think it's that simple in terms of getting him in there? And the buyout wasn't crazy. I think it was a couple $1 million for Trent. That's fine. Whatever. Move on. Cut your losses. You should be able to make a compelling offer to Vincent to get him on board. What are your thoughts there, Doug?
Yeah, ABC 1, 2, 3. It's just that easy. They've already completed step 1. Step 2 isn't far behind. And then just pick up the phone and tell Brian Vincent, hey, we've got a check here for you. You fill in the amount. It's like one of those old draft loan checks you'd get in the mail. You fill in the amount. There's no APR here you'll be assessed. We want to give you all the money. We're all in on you. We made a mistake, but we want to right the wrong today. Just pick up the phone, UAB.
Before we get into the bets for this episode, I'm going to toss it over to our guy, Stuckey, for a quick word from our sponsor, DraftKings.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast is partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook, where new customers can bet $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if your bet wins. And 3 months of NBA League Pass to new customers. To get started, just use promo code BBOC when signing up with DraftKings. Again, use code BBOC when signing up and bet $5 to get $300 back in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass. The crown is yours.
There's also a quick and easy way for you to tail us. First, sign up for Action Pro. You'll get instant notification when any Action Network expert tracks a bet, whether that's me, Duck, Stuckey, Colin Wilson. You're going to get all of those picks right away. So the best bets at the best prices. There's no worse feeling than losing by the hook when you could have been on the other side of it. Plus, you can access our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team and a ton of other benefits. And right now, we still have a special offer out to you. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and get $20 off the annual price with promo code BBOC20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code BBOC20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. Also, if you'd like to tail some of the bets that you're about to hear that we're going to run through in the episode here for week 8, there's going to be quick slip links in the podcast and episode description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. And with that, it's time to get into our best bet segment. That means 4 picks in total, 2 from each of us. Duck, take us away. You're headed to the MAC. No fear after you got burned last week by Toledo. Let's go with a big favorite.
Well, and I'll just set the stage here, too. The path has been cleared for our preseason MAC contender to make a run at the MAC title. All they got to do, as it was coined in Happy Gilmore, all you got to do is just tap it in. Just tap it in. Just give it a little tap, tap, tappy. Ohio has a conference loss. Toledo has 2 conference losses. Those were the major 2 preseason players here in MAC play. It's wide open for Buffalo. You 2-0 in league play for Buffalo. You've had the bye week to kind of recalibrate and reset your team. This is the chance for Pete Lembo to really make his mark on the program, and it starts in this game against UMass. I'm laying the 16.5 with Buffalo. Buffalo has the top rushing offense in the MAC and the top run blocking graded offensive line per PFF. UMass 97th nationally in defensive run success rate allowed and 109th in EPA per play defensively. UMass also 103rd in early down success rate surrendered. Buffalo is going to pound the rock here, and they are going to have success in early downs. And so what that's going to do is it's going to keep the playbook open on 2nd and short, on 3rd and short. Where UMass is going to be in trouble in this game is when Buffalo runs play action off of the run action. Buffalo is going to take some deep shots here with McMillan and Victor Snow, and with so much attention being put on LJ Henderson at running back, and with UMass having the worst coverage grades in the conference per PFF, this is the week that the deep shots are going to connect for Buffalo. The offense is going to be explosive. They're going to have some downfield passing. The run game is going to be humming. Defensively, Buffalo is 2nd in the MAC in graded pass rush per PFF, 2nd in overall tackling grade, and 3rd in overall run defense. UMass is scoring 6.5 points per game this season against FBS foes. UMass is 129th nationally in allowing havoc against them on offense. Just 127th are the Minutemen in rush play success rate and 124th in early down success. UMass should be in 3rd and long a ton here. I don't see them being able to throw their way out of it. Buffalo minus 16.5 here. It's really the second half of their season, which starts this week. I think they blow UMass out.
I mean, UMass coming off that performance against Kent. What do you say in the locker room? That the schedule's only going to get harder, considerably harder in the MAC from here on out. I can't imagine they have a whole lot of optimism or outs in terms of, changing things up schematically, personnel-wise. It is what it is with the Minutemen this year. So I wish you luck on that one. I'm going to turn to a potential shootout in the Sun Belt between Texas State and Marshall for my first best bet here, going over 64.5 between the Thundering Herd and the Bobcats. What have I learned about Texas State in 2025 that I didn't already know? Not much, if we're being honest. I mean, there's been a slight downgrade year over year offensively, losing McLeod and Mahdi in the backfield had hurt. But last season, they were 5th in total yards and 7th in scoring. They've fallen back to 15th and 29th, respectively, in those metrics. So they've gone from elite for the G5 to merely just really good. Brad Jackson, Bo Sparks, Lincoln Perry, I think they have enough in them to score at least 35 points against this Marshall defense. But the defense for Texas, goodness gracious, I've done this experience with G.J. Kinney. We've said it for years that he's on the radar for his next coaching job. All he really had to do was just get a little bit more out of this defense. Figure out a way, scheme-wise or through the portal, to get enough players in the secondary to be able to pair with what's usually been a pretty good pass rush. They haven't been able to do it. I mean, if I had to sum up this defense in one run-on sentence, they can't tackle, they can't stop the run, and no matter how many are in the box, they can't get their run fits right. and the turnovers have dried up like an oil deal gone bad in Texas. There's just nothing there to bail them out on that side of the football. Marshall, meanwhile, has gone from hopeless in August. We talked about this program being raided by Southern Miss to now they're ferocious by Sunbelt standards here in October. Carlos Del Rio Wilson, his 3 starts versus FBS competition, 13 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, 305 total yards per game. The kid is absolutely cooking. You can't take your foot off the accelerator at any point, whether you're rushing the passer, trying to contain him, because if you leave anything open, he'll throw over you, he'll tuck it and run, he'll make things happen. This kid is just a gamer. It is instantaneously totally changed the whole course of their season. This now is a team that has real aspirations of going to a bowl game. Everything is in front of them. Points per game scored with Del Rio Wilson at the helm, 82 in terms of those 3 games. So like when you look at the scoring that Marshall's allowed and the points that the Thundering Herd have put on the board, 82. Now, granted, one of them came in a double overtime game against Louisiana. It pains me. I'm going to say this is my total of the year. I'm going over. I absolutely love this one. I was shocked when this popped and it wasn't in the 70s. It's like, was this number set by some kind of power rankings from a month ago? Because Marshall's playing in nonstop shootouts. Texas State has no defense. And by the way, Texas State plays fast. And Marshall's pace, if you look at their season-long numbers, they're in the 60s in plays per game. But with Del Rio Wilson at the helm, they're running closer to a top 30 offense in terms of plays per game. And if they're playing catch-up or trying to keep up with the Texas State offense that can score a bunch of points, I could see this game being played in the 80s. I know that we don't ladder very often when it comes to totals. In college football, there's essentially almost a running clock now with the rules of the way they are. I just see this one blowing past this number. What are your thoughts on this Sun Belt matchup that, at least in August, looked like, just put a win on the board for Texas State? But they've been playing with their food. They've been playing in high-scoring games and getting burned. They just coming off that 41-34 loss to Troy. High scoring. I think both of these teams are capable of going for 40, which is music to my ears, with a total sitting in the mid-60s.
Yeah, I totally agree. Texas State has to feel really chapped after blowing the last couple of games they had firmly in hand, and situationally their defense could not be counted on to get stops. I think Texas State will win this game, but the mindset offensively has to be no lead is safe. We gave up a 28-7 lead in the first quarter against Troy. We gave up a lead with 45 seconds to go against putrid Arkansas State, who can't move the football on hardly anybody. Our offense has to score, and we have to score 50 in order to win this game, or we could be in some major, major trouble. So I think that has to be the mindset for Texas State. I think Marshall has really revamped their offensive output. We've seen Marshall since Del Rio Wilson has been inserted at quarterback. They look a lot more sharp, crisp. They're scoring a lot more points. The offense is moving the football in that kind of quasi air raid system that they wanted to implement anyway. We just didn't see it the first couple games of this season because they didn't have somebody at the helm that was able to really run the show. But I think both of these defenses are unreliable, both giving up 6 yards per play for the entire season. We'll really struggle for either one of these teams to get any stops. We should see a tremendous amount of pace, 17, 18 total possessions. This is going to be a fun one.
All right, last week, one of my winners was a very ugly under between Western Michigan and Ball State, and you're going back to the well. I think this is just a cash cow going on Ball State unders. Oh, let's see who they're paired up with. Akron. Oh, man. I can't believe that this number is sitting at 42.5. Where did you have this pegged?
I had it pegged probably 41.5 to 43. It's one of those plays where you're going to have very, very little pace. You look at Akron's offensive rankings this season, 133rd in offensive success rate, 136th in offensive finishing drives, 123rd in explosiveness, but they're only converting third down at 32%. Only 11 of their 22 red zone trips have resulted in touchdowns, 50%. Well, let's flip over to the other side and look at Ball State. 136th in FBS, dead last in offensive success rate. 134th in finishing drives. 134th in havoc allowed against them on offense. 31% on third down. And only half of their red zone trips, which is 10, have resulted in touchdowns, 5 on the season. Ball State has played a little bit better at home this season. but both of these teams are just completely capable of pulling complete no-shows on offense. Both receiving cores grade out in the bottom 4 in MAC play. Both of these teams grade out defensively in the top half of the league in defensive tackling metrics. The Ball State pass rush could present a little bit of trouble to Akron and their quarterback, Ben Finley. They try to throw the football, and they're a little better at throwing than they have been in previous seasons. But the other kicker here, which will be a little bit of a bonus, we're expecting sustained 15-mile-an-hour winds. Gusts will be at 26. There could be a little precipitation. The conditions in Ohio this weekend could be nasty, and that'll matriculate the under. I think this is going to be a slow-burning grind. We should see very little pace on either side here. Akron might try to throw it around a bit. They won't have a lot of success. We know what Ball State's going to do with truncating the amount of possessions, getting the quarterback run game going. This is an absolute dead under, in my opinion. First 1-17 wins this game.
All right, I'm going to close out our segments. The Delaware Blue Hens, a short road favorite at Jacksonville State. I'll lay the 2.5 here. First, a shout out to College Football Zone over on Twitter. He catalogs, among many things, overachieving and underachieving teams against the spread in college football. The Blue Hens are one of the major overachievers. They're plus 33 against the spread this season, which is third best in CUSA. They hung with Colorado. They either pushed or you got to win there depending on the number you got. And then they went and whipped FIU down in South Florida as a road dog. And it kind of makes sense in terms of the narrative in the offseason. Yes, they're an FBS newcomer, but they're a veteran team overall, and they're buttoned up in their coaching staff. 7 senior or super seniors on their defense. They took Western Kentucky down to the wire in a game that they would have won if Minicucci doesn't fumble at the goal line. I've seen enough from them to both respect them and trust them. And Jacksonville State, meanwhile, they have 3 wins, which is great. I think it is artificially inflating this number, where if they were a little bit closer to who they really were in terms of the opponents they played or the breaks they caught, I think this would be closer to maybe Delaware -5. Because when you look at their wins, when you do the autopsy, win over Murray State, FCS school, a 2-point win over Sam Houston State, who is more or less an FCS school as well. They're headed to an 11 or maybe 12 loss season this fall. Then you got Gavin Wimsatt, who has been benched in favor of Caden Creel. The kid can absolutely run the football. There is no doubt this is essentially a service academy offense. He can do that. He's run for nearly 300 yards in the last 2 games and a pair of touchdowns. But where I like to pull my attention is the defensive staff for Delaware. Against Caden Salter and Lewis, that freshman, Delaware gave up all of 15 rushing yards to the Buffalo's quarterbacks. Kewan Jenkins, who at least has, mobility, he finished with 5 rushing yards on 10 attempts. Caden Bennett from Delaware State, this is in your wheelhouse, Duck, at the FCS level, who's a run-first quarterback, 30 yards on 10 carries. This defense will be prepared for exactly what Jackson State wants to do, and they're more or less a one-dimensional team because what they want is Creel to throw it 15 to 20 times, max in the game, mainly dinking and dunking. But if he's forced to play catch-up, if they're able to stop the run or get them into third and unmanageables, I think there's going to be a lot of 3-and-outs. Manny Rojas, the defensive coordinator for the Blue Hens, he's been at UDEL for 6 years. He faced really good FCS dual threat quarterbacks in the playoffs and during the regular season in his many years as their DC. I think he will have some answers. I think you're going to see a lot of quarterback spies. I think they're basically going to challenge this kid to beat them. And I just think that they're prepared. I think they're the better team. Jacksonville State was a team I was, very low on in the preseason. And they're being bolstered by wins over teams outside of the top 150 in terms of S&P plus. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Blue Hens here under that key number of 3. I would lay 3 as well. I just, I'm hoping that everybody can get home to the window and cash this one and we don't get burned by a backdoor cover late. What are your thoughts on the Blue Hens, a team that we do need to specify this? Yes, they cannot compete for the Conference USA Championship no matter what. But if you look at the bylaws, they're also ineligible, quote unquote, for a bowl game. But if there are not enough teams that are eligible for those bowl games, they're one of the first teams that get a call. We saw this with James Madison a few years back. They ended up getting to go bowling in a year when they weren't eligible. So in terms of getting to bowl eligibility, that's still top of the totem pole for them. They want to have a winning season, winning record within Conference USA. So there's no reason to think that they're going to coast at this point or just feel good about their first year at the transitional level of FBS football. What are your thoughts on UDEL?
Very, very much a team that I think has been overperforming expectations for coming into FBS their first season. They're undersized defensively. There has been some depth that has been of concern. It certainly was of concern in the preseason, but you just talk about a tough out, an absolute feisty bunch of kids that play hard every single week and really had chances against Western Kentucky, really played fairly good football on the road at Colorado for a half. Did really well against Connecticut in a spirited battle there and against FIU in league play. And now they've got 12 days of rest. I think Delaware was a team that just needed the bye week so they could regroup, get themselves a little rest. They have 6 extra days of rest over Jacksonville State, who was in a complete dogfight against possibly the worst FBS team, or bottom 5 anyway, in Sam Houston State. And now Delaware has the scheduling advantage. I have been so impressed with Minicucci and how he's led this offense. I really think that this is a good play. I think Delaware, I mean, nobody's put Delaware under the microfiche this season as many times as you have. And if you've looked at it, I think this team has every opportunity to go down there and win. I don't think Jacksonville State's very good.
All right, best bets now in the book here for week 8, which means it's time for your 4-minute offense. You're going to take a deep dive on UNLV Boise. I have to imagine if UNLV wins this game that their head coach, who has coached at Mississippi State, he's coached at Florida, he has all this experience at power programs, I could just see him just walking right off the sideline into the arms of an athletic director who wants to throw him some money. It's going to be so interesting to see what is going to transpire in the coming weeks with the Penn State domino effects. Like if Manny Diaz leaves and goes back to Penn State, that's certainly a job that is of interest to many G5 head coaches. Same thing with Bill O'Brien at Boston College to a lesser degree. But there could be total and utter chaos in this coaching carousel. So there's a potential for UNLV's leading man to go ahead and scoop up that money and immediately leave. And by the way, the death knell, he didn't deny it in his press conference this week.
No, he didn't.
He said, I am going to be the coach here at UNLV. All right, Dan Mullen, I'll believe it when I see it, because if you win this game, then, I mean, the AP voters can't keep him out of the rankings for another week. I understand, and I'm one of them. I think that they are frauds based on what their record is. I think if they were playing a realistic schedule, they'd be closer to 4-2. They could have lost this past weekend to Air Force, who's 1-5 in the season. I get it. But the reality is they're undefeated. They have an opportunity here against Boise, who seems to be, turning it on at the right time. I have a play to tack on at the end of your preview, but I'm really interested to hear your deep dive between the Broncos and the Runnin' Rebs.
Well, and you alluded to a massive Mountain West Conference standings implication game here, as the loser of this one will almost undoubtedly need some help in order to get back into the race. And I think this game will look a lot different than the 2 epic battles that we had between these 2 foes last season. I'm still not entirely convinced that UNLV is rock solid and really good, but I mean, a bunch that could have 2 or 3 losses already this season. But you know what? They escaped against Miami of Ohio. They escaped by the skin of their teeth against Air Force last week. Doing so, giving up 603 yards of offense to the Flyboys. And all 5 Air Force red zone trips found pay dirt. Calandria, I thought, did a really nice job throwing the ball against an Air Force secondary that really hasn't stopped anybody all season, but 377 through the air, 11.5 yards per pass attempt was pretty impressive. You look at Jet Thomas, just absolutely smoking hot right now, 8 yards per carry on the ground, explosivity from anywhere on the field. And Boise State is 133rd nationally in defensive rush play explosiveness surrendered this season. PFF grades the Broncos as the 3rd worst run defensive unit in the conference. But it was better last week against New Mexico. So does that carry over here? We'll see. What we should see is a ton of early down rushing plays from UNLV, 5 to 6 yards a pop at a time. So what does that allow for? That allows the creative, dynamic Dan Mullen offense to have an open playbook on 2nd and medium, 3rd and medium. All of the plays in the playbook are at his disposal. UNLV should have confidence in their O-line here to convert 3rd and short, 4th and short. They're converting 3rd downs at 49% this season and are 5 out of 7 on 4th down. So they should be confident in their group to get the extra yard when they need it. Boise State, they're going to run the rock too. 98 rushing attempts in their last 2 games at home, and they want to get Sire Gaines moving downhill and then run play action off of it. Exactly what we saw against New Mexico last week. Maddox Madsen, 22 of 32 last week, 236, 7.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns. The receiving core is going to be critical here. Chris Marshall, Latrell Caples, tight end Matt Lauder, all are more important in a game like this, as UNLV at times has been torched through the air. So can the UNLV defenders maintain their eye discipline and lock in on the pass catchers? It's a very similar situational ask with a much different scheme. They had to maintain some eye discipline last week facing the triple option. It didn't go so well. The eye discipline here is, are they going to be able to support the run, and can they also lock in on this receiver group, or they're going to get torched in play action? So definitely things to watch. PFF grades the UNLV coverage unit as 3rd best in the conference, but they have 0 pass rush. They have not secured a sack in 3 weeks. So it could be trouble for this UNLV run and Rebs D. A D which is giving up 5.6 yards per carry on the ground. The betting line shows Boise as 11.5-point favorites. The totals tick down a bit, but I don't necessarily agree with the move. 62.5 now. I'm here to tell you guys, I think this one's a shootout. Both UNLV and Boise rank in the bottom 2 defensively in the Mountain West. 2 worst teams in the Mountain West in terms of tackling grades, partially driven by missed tackles. If you're going to miss tackles, you're going to allow yards after contact. You're going to try to shoulder tackle and just throw your shoulder in without wrapping up. That's going to be trouble, because these backs are going to make you pay. These tight ends are going to make you pay for Boise. Jet Thomas is going to make you pay. I think we see a ton of explosivity. I think we see teams up and down the field. Even if there's not a tremendous amount of pace, I think we're high scoring here. So I'm interested, Mike, to hear what you think about this matchup, and then we'll get to your play in 2-minute drill.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll give away the the play right here, because this was nearly one of my best bets for the week. I think it's just one of those weeks where I got 3 I feel very confident about, and it's over 62.5 in this game. I mean, UNLV games have gone over the closing total by an average of 9.8 points per game. Boise overs are 4-2 on the season. And as you alluded to, you got into all the nitty-gritty stats. UNLV is getting torn apart on the ground. And Boise State's numbers offensively, when it comes to their running game, fall into 2 buckets. Against nationally ranked South Florida and Notre Dame, 111 yards per game on the ground, a woeful 3 yards flat per carry. Against the rest of their schedule, which I would put into a bucket of lousy to really lousy run defenses, 923 rushing yards, 5.5 yards per carry. Dylan Riley breakout game incoming against this UNLV defense. And the biggest concerns that I have when it comes to the Boise defense is their fundamentals are just not good. 123rd in tackling. They're dealing with mobile, dangerous quarterbacks who can make things in off-platform, off-script, like Calandria. Let's just take a look at it. Byron Brown, South Florida. Liam Zarka, Air Force. They give up 71 total points to the Falcons and the Bulls. I think it's going to be a very similar game script. They have the juice offensively to make up for all those defensive sins and score 38 or 42 or 45 points in this game. I just don't understand why the market is pushing this number down, but I'm going to take advantage of it. I would have played it at 64. I certainly like it at 62.5. This is one of those examples of, I think this is the floor for the market. So jump in at the best number. And even if you have to go up to 63, but you get minus 105 instead of a minus 120, great. Let's try to maximize the money that we can win on this play. All right, on to our Group of 5 Moneyline Parlay presented by DraftKings. We're going to get into hopefully some winners here, because last week, it did not go well for us. North Texas, the Cinderella story, they looked like they had all this energy. They had the sellout. They had the black unis on. They were trying to hang with all the offensive fireworks from South Florida. And then that second half scoring flurry hit them. It looked like, basically a heavyweight match where they got knocked down twice in like 40 seconds. And then the game, it was over for all intents and purposes. And then, as you mentioned with your side of it with Ball State, they didn't come to play. But listen, whether it's a 1-possession loss, a bad beat, or getting, the whole thing wiped out, getting your ass kicked. Listen, we got to have some pride. We got to get right back up on this horse. I'm going to actually throw mine out first. We're going to switch up the order here, try to switch up the mojo a little bit. I'm going to go UTSA, Moneyline, plus 165, because I think the Roadrunners have woken up. They took their lumps. They fought the good fight against Texas A&M in a paycheck game. They lose by 18 points in College Station. Then they couldn't quite get it together defensively the next week at home against Texas State, and then the air was coming out of the balloon. They lose that shootout by a touchdown. But now they've won 3 of 4. The offense just ragdolled Rice. Perfect balance offensively. McCown has a super deep receiving core that he's spreading the ball out to. And I think what's interesting, I did the deep dive. I went back, I watched about 3 games worth of tape, all on 2x speed to go through all of his pass attempts. I also looked at the stats. He was let down so significantly by his offensive line, 129th nationally in pass protection. But we figured that might happen because they had so many transfers moving in. They had 3 transfers making significant contributions, if not starting on this offensive line. They haven't gelled yet. So what did Justin Burke, their offensive coordinator, do? He went to the quick game. He's cut down on McCown's ADOT by 15% year over year. He's getting the ball out of his hands, and he's saving the deep throws to come off of play action. You're also seeing more of his play action with waggles and rollouts. You saw it against Rice. Having that extra time, that space, creating a pocket to the left and the right, I think has really helped, as well as speed outs and these bubble screens to get the ball out of his hand. He's not as rattled. This is a smart coach. Burke is somebody who I trust, and with a veteran offense, even with a leaky offensive line in front of him, I trust McCown with this play calling combination to put up points in this game. In North Texas, we just mentioned it, the emotional letdown of getting blasted in your game of the century on your home field with a freshman quarterback who came in as a darling, one of the best stories in the whole country. Well, he turns it over 3 times. And when you flip it around, you look at the North Texas defense, the clear hole in UTSA is their offensive line. Well, UNT is 91st in pass rush per PFF. They only have 13 sacks on the entire season. They even made Western Michigan offense look pretty good earlier this season. So if you give this quarterback and this play caller time to work, I think they're going to carve up this defense, which right from the get-go, I think moves this game at plus 165 much closer to a coin flip. And while I think this has shootout written all over it, I think the Roadrunners are going to continue their ascent back to the top of the American, certainly to be either a pest or somebody who can play their way in if they get a lot of help to the conference championship game at the end. It's going to require them winning out. It's going to require them playing borderline perfect football. But I trust what I'm seeing from them offensively in the last month compared to Mestamaker, who, as a freshman with very limited experience, we know the whole story, didn't even start in high school. All of this is pretty much new to him. You know what else is new? Coming off a 3 interception performance where the whole country had eyes on you. I'm willing to pay to see it, that these kids bounce back and they have, what it takes offensively and defensively. I think this thing is just mispriced. I like UTSA to win it outright on the field. What are your thoughts on the Roadrunners kind of asserting their dominance in this in-state battle?
Well, we talked about it on this podcast last week. UTSA certainly asserted their dominance last week. And I think that was such a spot for UTSA to try to get right. I think if you just look at the broad landscape of the American as gamblers, we can say, UTSA has no shot. But you can't tell that locker room that. That locker room still goes in and prepares week after week, assuming that they're going to get back in the race. Well, who do they play? They play North Texas this week, then Tulane, then South Florida. If they sweep, which I'm not calling for, but if they sweep, they're right back in it. And so you have to assume that group believes that they can get their season back on track, that they have not put their best foot forward. And if you look at North Texas and some of the opponents they've played this season, anybody who's punched back has given North Texas some problems. Western Michigan, Army, South Alabama to an extent, who played them to a 6-point game with a minute left until North Texas entered through the front door. And then last week against South Florida, North Texas was going haymaker for haymaker. They get doubled up in the second quarter. That flips to the third quarter, back-to-back scores. They could just never recover. So it's a very interesting spot. I hate to go against our darlings in North Texas. We still love the Mean Green. But there's a real chance that UTSA has found it. Now, can they bring it on the road? Can they do it again? To be seen, but real interesting. You're getting a nice price on UTSA, and I think it's a real interesting spot. I think it'll be a game where we'll know the trajectory of the rest of their season based on how they play on Saturday afternoon. So I'll be watching that one for sure.
One of the ways I start my prep every single week, I go back to the previous week. I look at who had an emotional letdown, who had an emotionally draining win, perhaps. in a rivalry game? Anybody? Bowling Green? Anybody? That game, they were drawing dead, down 21-0, a rivalry game against arguably the best team in the MAC in terms of overall talent. They should lose that game 99 times out of 100. I believe Stuck dropped it on the recap podcast where they were like 0-75 down, 21 points this millennium, and now they're 1-75. So they pulled a rabbit out of their hat. That's great. That's why I circled this Central Michigan game. I didn't end up pulling the trigger on it, but I can't wait to hear your rationale for why Fire Up Chips is the right side as the part 2 to this Moneyline Underdog parlay.
Well, I still am not convinced that Bowling Green's any good, and the comeback win says more about Toledo, in my opinion, than it does Bowling Green. Shame on you, Jason Candle, for blowing that 21-0 lead in the rivalry game in a revenge spot from last season. With Lucian Anderson at quarterback for iZiggy, you should be embarrassed. Toledo should frankly just be absolutely embarrassed. But anyway, I should have seen a poor performance a couple of weeks back coming from Central Michigan because they themselves were off of a big rivalry win against Eastern Michigan. So it should have been not really a surprise that they go to Akron and throw up a complete turd. But now it's time to circle the wagons for the Chips. If this team wants to push towards some of their set forth preseason goals, they're not going to win the MAC, but if this team's going to make a bowl game and you look at what's coming down the pipe with Western Michigan, Buffalo, Toledo left on the slate, this game now has to be circled in red ink as one they have to get if they want to cap their season off with a bowl game appearance. So now it's Bowling Green in that situation, like you just mentioned, where they're off the big rivalry win, high emotional game. You look into the inner workings of that contest, and Bowling Green ran very, very few successful plays against Toledo. They finished the game with just 226 offensive yards on 53 total plays. The ground game averaged 1.7 yards per carry against Toledo. Drew Pine is still questionable for Bowling Green. We know that Anderson's not a good quarterback. I really think Central Michigan can kind of draw it up here to limit the Bowling Green offensive attack. BG is 126th in offensive explosiveness and 107th nationally in offensive finishing drives. I don't think there's going to be as many scoring opportunities because Central Michigan is going to run the ball. They're going to possess the ball. They're going to truncate the game down and limit the possessions. I think their defense will force a couple turnovers. I think after the bye week, to stew on that embarrassment against Akron, you don't want to lose to Akron. That's a team you just do not want to walk out of there and lose to. This is a complete get-up spot here for Central Michigan. I think they'll out-physical. It's almost a reset on your season, like we saw in the opener against San Jose, where this team was unknown, there was no expectation, and they just brought the attitude, the physicality in both sides of the offensive and defensive trench. I think we'll see a similar reset here with Matt Drinkle in this group. I expect the Chips to be fired up. I expect them to play pissed off. I think they're going to win the game on the field.
I like to do a little exercise where I try to project, particularly for the MAC, just as like a fun look ahead. I'll just go ahead for 2 weeks out and look to project some of the spreads. 2 weeks ago, before that Akron result and before the Toledo upset for Bowling Green, I had this one as a pick. And I think it is rightfully moved in the market, but I think it's providing real value. I think these teams are so much closer to a coin flip than what you're getting. What's the actual number here? It's plus 150.
4.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, our friends over at DraftKings have the best number on that one, plus 154 over at DraftKings.
Wonderful. So punch those two in. Hopefully we get this across the finish line for you. I like the fundamentals of this play a lot, particularly when you talk about a team with a first-year head coach. You're not going to lose the locker room. You're going to listen as a collective team in terms of we had the letdown against Akron. Now we have this extended prep time. In terms of tuning a coach out, that's not where they are in year one under Drinkle. So I think this is the right time to grab the Chips at an advantageous number. All right, that was our Moneyline Parlay presented by DraftKings. Check out the Parlay Express account in the free award-winning Action Network app, where we'll be posting this Moneyline Parlay. You'll find a bunch of other fun long shot bets and parlays there as well. You can also find the quick slip link in the podcast and episode description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow to find and tail some of the bets we've discussed today, including our G5 Moneyline Parlay. All right, time to close things out here. I already gave away one pick in my 2-minute offense, which was the over in UNLV Boise. So let's go through your FCS card here. You got a lot of favorites that you like here in week 8.
Yeah, we'll start in the Southland Conference with Incarnate Word. I project them at minus 14.5. I would lay up to 19.5. Ever since EJ Colson has been inserted into the lineup at quarterback for UIW, the passing offense has been significantly improved as the redshirt freshman has completed 72% of his passes with a 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio and 946 yards. The Cardinals have played a significantly stronger schedule to date, and the way that East Texas A&M lost their last game against Lamar was excruciating, and now they're back on the road here. The Lions allow 40 points per game and 407 yards per game, and they do not run the ball particularly well on offense. This could be major, major trouble here against a resurgent UIW team. Next one we're going to go to is the Ivy League, Yale. I project them laying 17.5. I'd lay up to 20.5. You just talk about a total spot to be able to play with piss and vinegar in your blood after an excruciating loss against Dartmouth last week. Dartmouth and Yale do not like each other. Yale could have won the game. They didn't. Well, this is a spot here for Yale to have a little fun hosting Stonehill, who's a bottom 5 offense in all of FCS football. Stonehill is averaging 15.7 points per game this season, 2.4 yards per carry on the ground. They struggle to protect the quarterback, and I would imagine a ton of negative plays for Yale in the backfield, just completely swallow up everything Stonehill wants to do. Yale's offense is going to look a lot better this week than it has last week. And actually the last 2 weeks after playing two of the better defenses in FCS in Dartmouth and Lehigh. Yale's going to put up 40 points here. I don't think Stonehill's going to keep up, so lay anything under 3 touchdowns. Last one, this will be a fun one. Montana is stepping out of conference to take on Sacred Heart. I'm looking at the over. It's projected at 53.5. I'd play this to 58.5. Montana has given up defensively 38 to Idaho State, 30 to Idaho, 20 to Indiana State, and 17 to Division II Central Washington this season, and they're now stepping out of conference in a game that they should completely dominate. But understandably, this is one where you rotate the twos in on defense early, because the one you really want to get is next week on Friday night, ESPN2, when they play Sacramento State. Sacred Heart is allowing 6.3 yards per play this season on defense and 5.8 yards per carry on the ground. Montana, 491 yards of offense per game this season, and they're giving up 400 yards per game on defense. Sacred Heart has seen nothing like this type of football that they're going to see from the Montana offense on Saturday night. The ground game is going to gash Sacred Heart. And you look at Sacred Heart, they play in the Northeastern Conference, and they play a lot of these teams that are slower pace, ball control, grind out the clock. They're still averaging 50 points in their games this season against these slower pace, terrible NEC offenses. This one's going to be a game that's going to have a ton of points. Montana could put up 50, and Sacred Heart will be in the 20s.
Before I get to my 2-minute drill, a plug for our new Friday program, the Weekend Warm-Up from BBOC. Duck and I break down everything you need to know. Give us a quick plug on why you have to listen live on YouTube, 2 p.m. Eastern every Friday, Duck.
Well, I love the live show. We engage with our fans. We welcome the live chat, and we get to your questions in real time. We talk about the Steam report, where we go through some of the line movement that's happened later on in the week. We cover important weather updates and games at the FBS and FCS level that are going to be impacted by inclement or adverse weather conditions. It's just a fun segment to be able to talk through the changes in the week of the landscape of the card, go through some of the movement. We get to cover some of the FCS games that actually have lines out, as those lines have been posted later and later this season. So we get to talk about some real numbers and not just projections. And we love the fan engagement. We love being able to connect with the fans through the live chat and answer questions in real time. It's just a really fun hour-long live show that we get to do that's just jam-packed with information to help you make smarter wagers each week.
All right, time to close out my 2-minute drill. This is going to be quick because I already gave out UNLV Boise over. We mentioned Toledo. I got to fade them here. I'm going to take Kent State plus 25.5. The Golden Flashes, baby. Last week, by the way, always track on the Action app because I'll put in some plays late. It was a lean for me on Kent's. Didn't log it as an official play, and then I saw the jerseys they were wearing, those throwback powder blues with the Bolt helmet, looking like the San Diego Chargers with LaDainian Tomlinson. I was like, I got to play it. Vibes only. This pushes it over the threshold. I'm now 2-0 on uniform vibe plays. USF USF earlier in the season, and then Kent State on Saturday. So make sure to check in on what I'm doing over there in the app. Listen, they looked feisty as hell against Buffalo earlier in the year, a 3-point loss. We think that Buffalo is the class of the conference. And they basically said, the hell with it. We're shelving our best players in our paycheck games. And then they reemerge against UMass and lay the wood 42-6. Toledo, meanwhile, we've just gone through it. They blew that 3-touchdown lead to Bowling Green. And are you ready for this second half drive chart from the Rockets, Duck? I'm going to shout out Dan Rubenstein of the Solid Verbal for this dramatic reading style of their drive chart. Punt, 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 fumble, punt, interception, end of game. Just unfucking believable that that's how they ended the game. Like, this is a team that has a veteran quarterback in Tucker Gleason. Jason Candle's been there forever. We have to hear all these, arguments about why he's basically unfireable, like he recruits the best, they've won so many games, blah, blah, blah. I think this guy is getting long in the tooth for this job. I think both parties, they need to just split. He needs to go somewhere else because it is not working. And now we're going to turn around and lay almost 4 touchdowns. I cannot see it. And I understand they blew out Akron earlier this year, 45-3. So you're saying just a rinse and repeat situation, another drag in the MAC. Well, prior to that blowout of the Zips, they hadn't beat a MAC conference opponent by 4 touchdowns in 25 games. It's just not his MO. He, and Kent, by the way, has way more fight. I think we've seen it. And they also have an elite return game that can flip this game or get you one of those touchdowns that otherwise wouldn't be available. Darius Clark is one of the best return men in the entire country. So he's going to steal yardage, maybe even steal points in this game. Give me the fighting Julian Edelman's here, plus 25.5. And I'll close out my 2-minute drill with this. Army at Tulane, the Green Wave laying 9.5. A salute, as always, to our troops. Army upset lifeless K-State. They scored 10 points in the final 3 minutes of regulation against UNT to take that thing to overtime. Then they beat the crap out of UAB in Charlotte. What that's done is I think it's made their perception as though they're closer to last year's team, which they are not. Because when you look at the underlying stats, they've proven to be a below average offensive team this season. All they do is run, but they're 99th in success rate on the ground. They're 91st in explosiveness. They're 40th in havoc avoidance, which actually sounds pretty good. But for a triple option offense, you should be a lot closer to the top 10 because of the way that you're running things. You're never passing the ball, so you can throw sacks out. To be in the 40s for havoc avoidance isn't good. And they're 117th in red zone scoring. So by not being explosive, they have to finish in the end zone when they get those red zone opportunities. They're not doing it. So I just don't see them being equipped to finish off those drives with 6 or equipped to throw the ball at all in this game. And Tulane, by the way, they got 2 extra days to prepare by playing Thursday last week. They have revenge on their mind for this game. For those of you who have forgotten, they went up to West Point and got pushed around on national television, lost the American Championship game in embarrassing fashion. Now they're hosting. Retzlaff is dealing. He was the reason they pulled it out against East Carolina in the first place. I trust him with the football. And when you're playing an offense that likes to play keep away like a service academy, this is paramount. This is a below average Army secondary, not total dog shit, but they're absolutely gettable with a quality quarterback like Retzlaff. If Tulane keeps the turnover margin anywhere north of -1, I think they cover this number. So go ahead and give me them below the key number of 10. What are your thoughts on this Army team that as I've said, they're stacking wins and they're competitive where, I'm a little bit surprised. But for the most part, I think it's a bit of fool's gold when it comes to the Cadets.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that you look at a coach like Sumrall at Tulane and what he's going to do to rally the troops in this motivational revenge spot. They were embarrassed last year in the AAC championship game at Army, and they remember that. It's not all the same players. It's not everybody who was there, but they absolutely remember that situation. And I just look at Army, who I think has now feasted on 2 of the worst teams in league play in UAB and Charlotte. But I still don't think this team is very good. I think Army's going to struggle to make a bowl game. It's a reason we took the regular season win under in the summer. And this is a major, major test for them the week before. They've got to go to Air Force. Are they really focused on this one? Are they looking ahead at the Commander-in-Chief trophy possibly being placed back in their cabinet? It's like, I just don't see a team that I think you have no explosivity. If you get behind, it's going to be really tricky to try to throw your way out of it against that Tulane defense. Tulane's I got to admit, Tulane's a lot better than I thought they would be. They've overperformed expectations, and they're at home in this spot. I don't think it's enough points here. Anything under 2 touchdowns, I think we're good.
So our tug of war took a big turn last week when I finally included a Power 4 game. I took the big swing for the Indiana Moneyline upset on the road in Eugene. I hit it, so it moves the ball from midfield to your 25. So I'm breathing down your neck almost in the red zone, giving you the opportunity to pick the game this week, set the stage. What do we have?
Well, we're taking Hawaii at Colorado State, and we're going to use a line of plus or minus 3. So I'll take -3 with Colorado State. You're taking +3 with Hawaii. And I don't have a lot of meat and potatoes to my argument here, but I will say this when it comes to Colorado State. They look terrible all season. Very similar to how Air Force looked really terrible for 8 weeks, and then something happened, and they just were able to turn it on. And it was like completely different players in Colorado State uniforms. Jackson Brousseau finally played how we saw him play the last couple of drives against UTSA when inserted. The ground game was humming and the running backs were running angrily. I saw something different in the trenches. The attitude, the intensity, the defense was flying to the football against a pretty good Fresno State team. They were pissed off. They played like they were embarrassed the last couple of weeks. Whatever Norvell said to them that week in practice, it was just absolutely stunning to see what that team did from the jump against against Fresno State. And that is a team that I want to play on in a situation for Hawaii where you've got road Hawaii. They're not as good away from the island. I still don't think Hawaii is that good. We saw the offense just dink and dunk their way and play Plinko against Utah State. Utah State scored with 14 minutes left in the third quarter, and then they didn't score again. They made some mistakes and some turnovers and stopped on downs in the red zone and kind of gave that one away at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was up watching it. It was pretty frustrating. But I still do not think Hawaii is very good. And if we get that same Colorado State attitude, intensity, the laser focus on what they need to do, this could be major, major trouble for the Bows. So I'll take Colorado State -3.
All right, I'll start here. I think it's completely fair to say, do we have any idea who this Colorado State team is? Because they scored 16 points against UTSA and had awful in-game coaching. They mustered 3 points against Wazoo. Or are they the resurgent Rams that got all the breaks against Fresno? Because I think it bears mentioning when you dig into the box score, they get a scoop and score, they pick off Warner in the end zone, and then they have another pick that sets up a short field touchdown where they scored from the 7. Fresno, 469 total yards, Colorado State, 334 total yards, and they win by 28 points. So I'm just going to put that out there for starters. Secondly, the run and shoot needs dogs out on the perimeter. It's not just we got a highly talented wide receiver one and then a bunch of decoys. They need guys who can stretch the field. They need guys who can make people miss in the quick game. And they have their top 3 guys finally. When you look at it, Ashlock, Jackson, and Senecal with a full deck for the first time since week 1, what happens? The trio goes for 21 receptions, 287 yards, and 3 TDs. Alejado goes nuclear against Utah State, finishes with 413 through the air. Now, I get that this is a roadie. This is Hawaii on the mainland, so it's immediately one of those alarm bells going off for situational bettors. But they just did this flight to Denver. They just go north from the airport for an hour instead of south when they went to Air Force and they were able to push around the Falcons on their home turf. So they have that familiarity. The confidence is building. And when you go to Air Force and score 44 in a blowout win, I feel like it's very easy psychologically to say to yourself, why not do it again? Let's see if we can win another shootout. Because I don't trust this Colorado State defense if they're not getting turnovers. You can throw on them, you can run on them, and they cannot rush the passer to save their life. They're 132nd in pass rush per PFF. You can absolutely rough up Alejado, but if you give him time to cook, I think it's going to be lights out for this Rams defense. And just look at his numbers, blitz versus non-blitz this season. When you drop 7 or more and make him throw into tight windows and you can get into his face with 3 or 4 rushers, his PFF grade is 62 with 6 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's when he's not facing the blitz. But when you're forced to send 5 or more, all of a sudden he sees cover 1, he sees cover 0, he certainly sees man-to-man concepts on the outside. His PFF grade shoots up to 78 out of 100, 3 TDs, 1 pick, 4-to-1 big-time throw, the turnover-worthy throw ratio. So I just see this as an opportunity for Hawaii with a full deck brimming with confidence to get to this bowl eligibility. You saw it you can just see it with the body language. Timmy Chang is like high-fiving guys coming off the field that are laying the wood defensively. The passing game is clicking in the way that he has envisioned when he put the lay on at the first press conference. This is what he wanted to bring back to the island, and they have it. And as I said, the opportunity for them to repeat what they did not that long ago in the state of Colorado. I like it. I think it's going to happen. I'll gladly take the 3 points here. That'll do it for today's episode of the Group of Five Deep Dive under the Big Bets on Campus banner presented by DraftKings. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Next episode, we'll pick out another 5-star review and give out a futures ticket. Whether you want to go for the playoff, the Heisman, any particular award, or look-ahead game, we're happy to file that for you. Hit me up on X and we'll go ahead and get you your prize. Duck paid out the last one. I am up for the next. Remember, if you'd like to tail some of the bets that you heard in today's episode, look for the quick slip links in the episode description. You can also go to actionnetwork.com/betnow. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search BBOC and you'll have access to all of our college football content. Subscribe and like and comment. Everything helps in terms of visibility for our brand. Check out our guy Stuckey on the favorites every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And as always, catch him and Colin as they break down the full slate on Thursdays, going from the trash segments all the way up to the marquee matchups. We talked about the weekend warm-up, 2 p.m. on YouTube at the BBOC channel. You can go ahead and give us questions live. We're going to answer them for you. And then the live show on Saturday with Duck, Stuck, Colin Wilson, and myself. That's it for us. Thanks for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.